Hey everyone, it's been so long since I made a video I've almost forgotten how. It's actually pretty tilting at the moment. I just learnt that my new improvements had not been showing up on my streams and podcast Google Hangouts because I hadn't changed any of my settings. So even though everything had been looking fresh and clear and new and like this, for me, everyone else had been getting the same old fuzzy video. So I'm learning. There's also a weird 3-second stream, I think, on Twitch of me going, I'm going to start again. Because, yeah. But welcome back. Today's the day I'm releasing my market share database. It's taken about a year to compile, with a great deal of help from a lot of other people. I'm really digging in for the last few days as well, last few weeks. The more I thought about it, and the link's going to come up on Patreon for everyone in about 10 minutes after this video releases, and then the link for everyone will come out at 1 o'clock. Patreons get a slight early release here. I'm trying to find as much value for the saintly people who actually donate me money as possible, but I'm a big free the data kind of guy, so I am releasing it for everyone. It's not to a big fanfare or anything with 14 followers. I think you guys are pretty much going to be the ones who have access to it anyway, but regardless, as I was looking through it, I decided I needed a video because I know not everyone is into spreadsheets. So they don't know what it is, how to use it, or if it's of any use at all. And it's taken a lot of work, and I think it's incredibly useful for everyone. So I wanted to just briefly go over what it is, what I've done here, how I think you guys and pretty much everyone can use it, and stuff like that. I've recorded this video twice, so it's tired and I'm late, because it keeps running too long, and then me getting the settings wrong and everything. It's been a bit of a night, but I really think I've got it nailed in this time, so let's find out if that's true. I want to do a brief market share thing. If you follow me, you probably already know, right? So sorry for teaching you to suck eggs here, but just briefly, market share literally just means the percentage of, essentially. It's a percentage of the team's production that player produce. The reason I value it so highly is it's literally the only thing outside of draft round that has any signal at all to predicting future success in the NFL. So outside of drafting players literally in the order they're drafted in the NFL draft, what they do in college, how productive they are compared to their team's offense is the only thing that can help us identify Stephon Diggs, who dropped later, or Adam Thielen, who was undrafted, compared to everyone else. Now, draft capital itself is actually has more signal, because opportunity is everything, and draft capital means being drafted earlier means you're likely to get more opportunity. But in order to try and identify small edges, considering what players do in college, their production in terms of their market share, or the percentage of the production they got for that team's offense, is the only thing with any kind of use, and it actually has actually comparable usage to draft capital, slightly under it, almost as predictive by itself. Those two combined are pretty much everything. Now there's lots of other things to take into account. You have to look at everything. There's no point in ignoring information, but not having a specific skill set, or not thinking I'm able to identify anything that NFL coaches aren't, I want to be able to compare something that a player does to past players in NFL history who were successful, and then see how much they looked like those players, and that's where the signal comes from. So that's why I'm big into market share, but it's by no means everything, and like I say, it adds a small edge, not a huge one, on draft capital in and of itself. Now the reason I've gone to the trouble of building the database is because I want to use it. It's hard to track down all the information you need and line it up, so that you can look at what a player did at the age they were when they did it. Believe it or not, that's actually the biggest trick that I've got. Now, for most people, I think the use of it is cutting me out the loop, essentially making me a little more useless, because I get asked a lot what players' breakout age was, what their college dominator was, and so on and so forth, because there's no great source for all of those things, or a great history of it where you can literally just go look it up. I'm seeing a lot of it start to come out, age-adjusted production stuff, and most of it's behind paywalls. And if you're anything like me, you just want to be able to track it, keep up with it, and compare it yourself. And that's what you can do with this database. So I'm going to take a quick look at what's in there. And then one tool that Zeno James has built us, so that if you're not into the spreadsheet, which is more than understandable, and like I say, even if you're not in the spreadsheets, you can just look at two players and their college dominators right next to each other. But if you're not into spreadsheets and digging in and testing metrics, Zeno James has built something where you can literally just look at an image, a graph that shows you where those players were at each age compared to successful NFL players. So it's just an easy visual representation, a summary. In something that actually requires more examination, but it's a really good summary to look at it this way. So I wanted to show you that. The link to that tool, which we're hoping to develop into more of a website, a freely available tool that everyone can use to evaluate players. But for now, it's mostly just a tool, and you guys are going to have the most access to it. So switch over for a second, and let's go look at the database itself. This is what you're going to see when you follow the Google Sheet link, which is going to, again, post about 10 minutes after this video releases. So it should already be there, to be honest, because it's releasing earlier in the morning. Pardon me. It's got something like 213 different columns. Yep. And I've tried to put as much in here as possible so you can compare things directly without having to go to 3 different sources. It's got every player I've found from 2000 all the way to the 3 draft classes to come. So we don't know who's going to be in the 2021 draft class, but there are only 3 players we suspect are going to be in that class right now. And so I've put those guys in there, the 2020 draft class, and of course this draft class. There are a lot more players in this draft class already in the database because we have a better idea of who's declaring. So you can compare all these players from 2000 all the way to 2018, what they did in college, and then see what they did in the NFL for a one-to-one comparison of how productive they were compared to each other, which is the essential use of it. I've got every position in here from quarterback to running back, tight end, and wide receiver, so you can see them all. Yeah, that makes sense. This would be when Excel decides to break down. Okay, it's back. All right, so just simply, I've got not everything. You never get anything. It's got 213 columns in here, and it still doesn't have everything. But it's what I find most useful that I want to compare directly. Obviously, it's got draft round for every player, the draft position if they're undrafted free agents. That's noted. Their position, the year they were drafted, the age they were when they were drafted. Winky was pretty old, huh? And their date of birth. Tracking these down can be a chore in and of itself, and so they're all available in here as well if you ever need them. What you have then is most of the first columns here are just their raw counting stats. So the number of passing attempts a player got at age 20, 18, 21, whichever age you want. Then their passing completions. The completion percentage, because that was an easy calculation to do, so I included it, and passing yards, interceptions, interception percentage. I've also I inserted the passer rating formula in here, so you can see their passer rating by age as well for quarterbacks. You then move on to the rushing stats. So you see all their raw rushing stats, all their raw receiving stats. Now, the really interesting things come up a little later where you get into their market share. So you can see the percentage of the team's production in rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, then receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. MS, again, literally means market share or percentage of their team's production. And then I've just continued that while I was already here. You can see their total counting stats, how many receptions, yards, that's receiving yards, should put in there, their yards per reception, the total number of games they've played. I'm not going to read out all the columns to you, but the really interesting ones for me are the difference from successful NFL players in terms of their market share of receiving yards. So I've got a baseline of what players did on average if they were successful in the NFL at each age, and this compares it to how they did in college for each of these prospects. It also adjusts for position, so this is 4.5% over the average for running backs at age 21 if they were successful in the NFL. And then I've got the average of all of those, which is actually the most significant column if you're interested in models or what has the best signal. If you're interested in that, the third column here, the third tab, which is available on your sheet too, that's about to be released, you can see the R-squared value, how these values compare individually to average points per game in the player's first 3 years. I showed you the sample that I used, how many players were in that sample, and that's the value that it's comparing to right there. And since I get asked this a lot too, I included the formulas. So if you're interested in what my running back model formula is, it's right there. If you're interested in how to calculate college dominator, the formula's right here. And so those hopefully are useful to some people as well. But if you just look at interested in players, obviously the database has just got all the information in here for you. I also included a separate section called 4 metrics. These are the most often used to create college dominator or predictive models or anything else. Their best and last seasons are often used, and so I just included them separately so you can compare all those in one column instead of having to look through 2 different columns depending on when they finished or what age they finished. You can see their last market share of rushing touchdowns all in one column. I've also got, obviously, college dominators. I actually created a rushing college dominator. I haven't seen that a lot. It's the same principle as a receiving college dominator that you see everywhere. But what I did is purely for the rushing yards and touchdowns, what was their college dominator? And so I think that might be useful. I'm starting to use it in some of my testing and metrics as well. I also put the percentile. So based on this entire database, what percentile is their college dominator, the rushing or the receiving. So these are the percentile scores. So Rudy Johnson here is in the 98.9% percentile of the rushing college dominator, and the college dominator was his college dominator was 73.6. So that's an incredibly high score just based on the rushing work that he had. I also have all the breakout ages in the titles here. I tell you what the threshold is, what they have to do with their combined receiving yards and touchdowns in order to be considered breaking out at any particular age. And I've got that for every position with different thresholds for each. QB breakout age is a little special, and what I did is I said a quarterback broke out if they were above average for efficiency for quarterbacks in the NFL that have had at least one top 12 season at any given age, the average of any given age. So that's a little different. You can also see my models, and again you can see what's in my models in the third tab, and how each player scores, and this means you have an 18-year history of how players scored with my wide receiver pre-draft model, post-draft model. These aren't ranking engines, I'll point out. They're literally trying to evaluate the production compared to successful NFL receivers, which is a very different thing, in my opinion, than just to rank players. But you can compare all of those. I have some combine metrics that I hear most often used, like BMI. I haven't got a film grading yet. I'm looking for one of those, and hopefully I can find a history of it so I can track that back all the way to 2000. But I do have 40 times height, weight, height adjusted speed score, and as you can see, some players just have not tracked down the data for them yet. But there's an awful lot of combined data in here for every position as well. Lastly, and what I find the most important and why I lined it up this way for me, is I want to be able to compare what they did in college to what they did in the NFL. And putting this section in here means that I can do that without having to look through 3 different sources. So you can see how many top 5, top 12, top 24, top 36 seasons they had, how many seasons they produced over 1,000 rushing yards, or over 1,000 receiving yards, or over 4,000 passing yards in the NFL. And again, the average points per game through their first 3 seasons. So if the player is drafted in 2017, their average is just based on 2 years so far. But everyone else is based on their first 3 years in the NFL. So there's a lot in here, including the most looked up stats or the most asked about stats, and again you've got an 18-year history of it so you can compare past prospects. All the prospects for 2019 are in the main database, but I also created a second tab, so you can just look at prospects through the 2019, 21 and 20 draft class, just so you don't have to search through everyone and you can look at them individually. And again, you can hide and delete columns as long as you save a backup copy for yourselves. So you can just look at the ones that you're interested in. If you just want to see their college dominators, or you just want to see their breakout ages, you can just hide or delete everything else. Again, don't delete it from the Google Sheet, but delete it in a backup copy for yourselves, and then you can just go down the line and see every player compared to each other. That's how I do it anyway. So yeah, I also have this, just the prospects for the next 3 draft classes. Isolated, so you don't have to go through the entire database just to see the new rookie prospects. Alright, so there's a lot in there. I think that R² tab is actually most useful for those who want to dig into building models, seeing which of those things is most correlated to points per game in their first 3 years. I think that's useful for knowing what's valuable and what's not. But if you're just interested in looking at what a college dominator is, or what a player's breakout age is, it's all in there. And also having this 18-year history, I can't find it anywhere, which is why I built this thing, mostly so that I can look it up. But I'm hoping it provides some value to you all to help your own research and looking for edges in this coming draft class and the draft classes to come. So you can compare this year's rookies to what rookies look like over the last 18 years. The other thing that I wanted to show you here, I've been on 16 minutes, so I'm not doing too bad. It's gone triple that before. And again, the link to it is going to be posted in the same post that has the link to the database I was just showing you in Google Sheets. But this link will take you to something that Zeno James has built us, and that's the dude _Z on Twitter. He's just someone you should follow. He's cool, he's hip, and he builds stuff that is useful. And again, we're talking at least about turning this into more of a website, a freely available tool for everyone. And what it can do, if you're not interested in the rest of the spreadsheet, you just want the dominators and breakout ages, or maybe take a look at my models to make fun of me, whatever, is you can expand the cursors here and you can look at any position or a number of positions, and then you select the players that you want. I've just got N'Keal Harry selected right now, and then what it does is create this baseline regression, which is basically looking at what he did in terms of his market share of receiving yards in this case, because you can change the variable here. You can change it to rushing touchdowns, or market share of receptions, or games played even. And it will keep generating new regression lines. And what this regression line shows is the average of successful NFL players. So N'Keal Harry was over the average of players that are successful in the NFL at age 18, 19, and 20. What is successful? Well, you can change it actually down here with the custom baseline filters, but it's set for wide receivers. It's set at any player that has at least one top 36 finish in PPR since 2008. And this is the average of what those players did in college. Being over that is one of the clearest signals of being a good player versus being maybe good in college, not good in the NFL, that I have found. And so this is a summary, and something like everything. You need to take in as much information as possible to get as much right as possible. But I think this is a really fair way of summarizing whether a player was overproductive, over the average in terms of the production in college, or under it. And you can most get better as the age. Most do not look like Harry. Harry's a really good example of a productive player. If we look at Michael Thomas, if I can remember how to spell, who's an exception to most rules, he actually has a more typical production profile, which is most players come in underproductive, get better as they age, and then finish up around about or just over the average line. The most important marks is age 18 and age 20 or 23. And you can see you have to get more productive in order to stand out as being good. At age 18, you have the least amount of advantage. You don't know the team, you don't know the scheme, and you have the least amount of physical development than you'll ever have. So if you're overproducing the other players on your team, then that's probably got something to say about your raw talent. Same with producing late. The more you produce, the more unlikely it is to be veteran or senior difference, right? They give their seniors more opportunity, they're bigger, they're stronger, they know more about the offense. But if you're producing up here, or really over the 35% threshold, then that's more likely that saying something about your raw ability than it is about that veteran difference. And so those are actually the two most important points: what you do early and what you do late, if you like to dig into it a little more. But again, it's just a good overall summary of how productive a player was in college. And because it's based on the database, which also comes up in this second tab here, you've got the Google Sheet, so you don't need to worry about copying and pasting here. You already have all of it. But this to summarize it for you without you having to do any extra work. So I'm really thankful to Xeno for building this. It's a fantastic tool. It's a really powerful evaluation tool to compare different prospects, because you can add in more than one prospect and see them on the same graph. So how do they compare to each other in terms of how productive they were at different ages? So I think it's a really powerful tool. And right now, you're pretty much the only people that are going to have access to it. We share it on Twitter, but who's listening to me? So anyone following on here, or 14 of you, you saintly people, I really do appreciate. This is my big push. This is a big thing that I've done to really try and give you guys some value. To thank you for doing that, guys and girls. So hopefully you find some use in it. I've put as much in. If there's like a calculation or a stat or a metric that you don't see in there that you want access to, you want an 18-year history of, tell me and I'll add it. If there's a player missing, let me know and I'll add them. Right now, I think it's pretty up to date. There's about 555 players since 2000 that have played in the NFL who I don't have data on. That's because they're either not on Sports Reference, or I don't have their date of birth, or there could be a name lookup problem, which is not something most people are interested in. But if I've got their name different to how it is in the master database, then it won't look up their stats. So homies, let me know if you see someone missing that you're interested in, and I'll check them out or try and hunt out their data. I'm going to slowly add those players to it as I go along. But I think most any player you can name or who you could be interested in, you'll probably find in there. There are some that have played for small schools that you probably are interested in that I haven't found yet. But players like Adam Thielen, I've gone and dug their stats out of their, their college universities hellish place of a website. All of them are bad, and it inserted them manually into the database. So you can look at players like that, but not all of them. Like, I think I'm still missing John Brown, I'm still missing some of Cameron Meredith's stats, I'm still missing David Johnson's stats, and that's just because you have to do that all manually, digging through college websites which are not built to do that. But if they're on Sports Football Reference, they will be in the database, or it's a naming problem. Let me know. So yeah, I've managed to make this 2 minutes longer without adding too much more to it. But if you have any questions, hit me up. If anything doesn't work or anything's missing, you want to see anything added, let me know. Like I say, this is the motherload of the work that I've been putting in. At this point, for me, I have a lot to be getting on with. I set this deadline not because, it's a big release date. It does feel exciting to me, actually, to release this and hopefully add some value to you all, for you all. But I set a date mostly because I'll keep editing it if I don't. FS Statistics are starting up on a draft kit, and I might even get the chance to run a team as one of the teams that are working on that. So I'm excited about that. I have to dig into my projections model, improve it for next year for Player Profiler. Because I've rushed to this deadline, I actually have a pretty good opinion. I think at this point I have a solid opinion on most prospects in the 2019 class, which means hopefully I'll be able to write more content for DLF, Dynasty League Football, and FS Statistics, and I haven't been writing a lot lately, so I'm hoping to get into that. So I'm going to turn over to a lot here. I'm going to continue to try and produce things regularly every month, even during the off season for you guys. But I'm excited to move on from evaluating prospects for the 2019 class. Until the draft actually happens, I'm pretty set on what I think about most of these players. So by all means, ask me. I'm free and ready to answer questions on them at this point. and I'm excited about the stuff we're going to be working on this off season. Dynasty is my main haunt, and this is the season for Dynasty. So hopefully you guys are too. Trading's open back up, so hopefully this will be useful for that as well. I don't know. Alright, I best get out of here before this video gets too big. Email me, comment on Patreon anytime. Hopefully I'll be able to create some more videos this month and next month, because again, it's probably better to hear a boring guy talk about this stuff than read a boring guy talk about this stuff, I think sometimes. But yeah, thanks guys. I hope you find it interesting, if nothing else. And yeah, have fun. See you later.